Hi everyone, we're here with Albie Brown and Will Newman. They have a brand new app called Spotter. It's a parking app. And James Kennedy, our transportation correspondent, is here today. He's going to help us interview them. Guys, tell us about your new app.
Sure. So Spotter is Airbnb for driveways.
Love that.
So we have a lot of people who basically have these empty driveways, these idle assets. And the idea really came about because I went to school in San Francisco. And every single day I'd wake up half an hour early with my whole carpool, and we'd all have to get to school early. Sometimes waking up at like 6 a.m. just to drive into the city. Yeah. And we drive past all these empty parking spots, these driveways. And basically we would circle the block, wasting tons of gas, wasting tons of time. And we'd see these open driveways, and we'd have to park half a mile away still, just to satisfy all the requirements and the parking signs and placards. So it became very frustrating, and it became a big pain point and something I started to think about a lot. And Will actually has a similar story about it.
Yeah, similar for me. I'm from the Jersey Shore, so it's not a city area, but tons of off-street parking. But any Saturday it's just jam-packed with people, and going down there's a real pain, just driving around blocks and blocks over and over again. And again, like as soon as Albie told me the idea, I was like, wow, yeah, like thinking back, like all those empty driveways that are like totally unused, and like you just wish you could pay somebody to use it, but you can't.
Yeah. So how's the app going so far? It's live, right? I can download it on my iPhone?
Yeah, so it's live. So we started out in Brown's startup class. So I studied computer science at Brown, and we built this thing. So it was always sort of this idea in the back of my head, but then I ended up studying computer science, building this thing with a few friends, and then getting Will involved. And now we're just launching and going wide in Providence. And the response has been great. People are super excited to begin sharing their driveways, and they really feel like they're helping the community. By increasing the supply of parking, they're limiting the need for the construction of additional lots and garages, which really detracts from the charm of the city and are sort of a waste of space.
So tell us exactly how it works. I drive up to Providence, I have the app on my phone. What do I do next?
So it's as easy as clicking a button.
Yeah,
I know that sounds cheesy.
I can do that.
But basically it's very simple. So we have a big Park Now button where you just click that, it finds the nearest available spot to you, and gets you parked in a second. So it basically guides you right there, so you get navigation directions right to your spot, and you're able to find an available spot and set as much time as you need. So you can actually add to your spot after you've left, which is something that's actually been implemented in other cities for metering, but it's never been done with driveways.
All right. Now, I'm guessing you guys want to make money off of this. Do I have to pay to park in these driveways? How does that work? How much does this cost me?
So we really want the spot owners to be making a lot of money. They get the lion's share for sure.
Yeah.
But we do take
Very
a small.
generous of you both.
We do take a percentage just to cover operational costs and cover payment processing fees. But yeah, basically the idea is we pay most of the money back to the spot owner, and there's something else in there.
How much does it cost me, the consumer?
So right now we're still doing our promotional rate, so $1 an hour parking in Providence, which is 25 cents less than the metered parking, maybe just enough to convince someone to switch over or begin using the app. We think of it as sort of a complement to existing metered parking.
I love that. One thing I wondered is, will this app benefit the driver or the person with the parking spot more?
Hopefully everyone.
What do you think? Who really? And one thing I wondered about locally is there's where people park downtown, the most need for parking. There's not a lot of residential space around here. Will it really be that useful in a city like Providence?
That's a great question. So definitely in downtown areas, there are some. There's a few houses, definitely out towards Federal Hill and up just a little north of here. But yeah, I think that is a big problem. There's a ton of commercial lots out here, and it's really saturated. The parking market is very saturated here. But in Providence in general, parking on the east side you'll hear a lot about that in the news. And parking's a pain pretty much everywhere in Providence, and we've gotten a great response. So we've interviewed a lot of people, just random people on the street, people in coffee shops, all over, people we see parking. And basically everyone says the same thing, which is, yeah, of course I'll download this and start using it to park. It's obvious.
Cool. So one thing I wondered, and James, I bet you'll have some follow-up questions on this. Are you guys is your app encouraging people to drive? Generally, that's something that, James and I would like to discourage people from doing, but maybe you guys are making it easier for people to drive into the city rather than taking public transportation.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, we've thought about that a little bit. It's definitely, anytime you're offering more supply of something, there's going to be, it's to meet a demand, right? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to meet the demand for parking. We're doing that by increasing the supply of available parking. So we thought that maybe to an extent it will allow people to park more, maybe incentivize parking and driving a little more. But overall, it's still paid parking. It's not free parking, right? So if we were opening up driveways for free or something like that, then sure, I think people would definitely rather do that over riding a bike or taking public transportation. But because it's still paid parking and it's a cheaper option, that's the whole goal, right? It's to make things, it's to incentivize the convenience factor and just the monetary factor, I guess, right? Making it a little bit cheaper.
And not to mention, people waste so much gas every year circling the block.
Yeah.
And by waiting to find parking spaces, they're creating traffic congestion, which totally adds to the overall impact to the parking environment. So we think it's definitely a bit of a balance, but for the most part, it's sort of a win-win.
I love that. So James, you probably no one's written more about
Nobody
parking
has
than
written
you.
more about parking
Yeah,
other than
you
Donald
must have
Shoup, probably.
Yeah, who we've talked to.
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
he's
Yeah.
really nice. Yeah.
He's really nice.
So, as the resident parking obsessed person, I have so many questions. One of the questions I have is that I struggle sometimes with progressive communities to convince them that paid parking is a good thing. Even within RI Future, we've seen submissions and certainly plenty of comments from, I think, people that I would normally agree with politically, but who think that paid parking is kind of cutthroat and too capitalist. And what would if you were talking to someone like that, how could you convince them, give them the progressive argument for why paid parking is a good thing?
Yeah, so we could do that. I think maybe easier for us is to give you the progressive argument for why paid parking with spotter is the good thing. So,
Yeah.
so for us, there's a lot of instances where, for example, if someone works at a local business and has to go move their car every 2 hours, that seems like a total waste of time and gas and energy. It's just a silly thing that people do, and people do it every day. That's how a lot of people park at work. So for the employee, I think also for the overnight parker, who otherwise would have to go down to the city and get a parking permit for overnight parking, and for the person at school, so for the student, there's just a lot of different use cases and types of people that we think will begin using this as our early adopters that potentially would need a paid parking spot. So 2-hour parking doesn't make sense for a lot of people. The same thing, so that's meter parking. Commercial lots don't make sense for a lot of people because it's just way too expensive, and there's just no reason that is a sustainable way to park every day at work. So by tapping into the sharing economy and working with local residents who are hoping to improve their community anyways and who have this idle asset, this driveway, they can begin bridging that gap and helping the people that need it most.
Yeah, and I also think, to add on to what Albie's saying, is when you have the city installing parking meters, the city's the one collecting that revenue.
Yeah.
So you don't really know where they're going to spend that money, as opposed to with our app, with Spotter, anybody who has an empty driveway can sign up, put their spot on there, and start generating revenue themselves. And that way the money is staying in the community, and it can be used to benefit their house, benefit the neighborhood, anything like that. And I mean, I think Albie would agree that even parking meters to some extent can be beneficial, but only when that money is really benefiting the place where the parking meters are installed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been a real, I'm sorry, but no, that's been a real, I think that's actually one of the more legitimate complaints about the parking meter system in Providence has been that, you're being from San Francisco, you know this, that Donald Shoup has always advocated that you meter the parking flexibly, but then the money goes to the street or the neighborhood that's been metered, and it's a good way to politically make everything move smoothly. People can see that the money that they're getting has put trees on their street or fixed the sidewalk or lowered their taxes or whatnot. And so people support that, and it's a good way of dealing with this inefficiency in transportation but not ruffling any feathers. And I think that one of the critiques that we've heard, which I think is legit, is that the Elorza administration has more or less thrown that money into a slush fund. I guess, so one question I do have is that with the Donald Shoup model, typically you have kind of a flexible price, right? Like if we had a big concert here and there are lots of people, the price may go really up, and then maybe at 3 in the morning, if you need a parking spot in a residential neighborhood, it might be free because nobody even needs one, right? Have you thought about introducing a flexible price as a way of dealing with that?
Definitely. So as I mentioned, $1 per hour is our introductory promotional rate. We're definitely working on our algorithm for variable pricing. So we're thinking of implementing a surge pricing. So for example, when a lot of people are going to park for that concert or water fire, potentially, the prices would all go up a little bit. Whereas for the normal day or for the weekend day, it would go down. So I think, it makes a lot of sense. And I think it can also vary by location, neighborhood. There's some neighborhoods that's a lot harder to park in, or by time of day. So I think, and all of that would really be covered by surge pricing, I think.
And do me and our readers and our watchers a favor and tell us who Donald Shoup is.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. So Donald Shoup was a researcher at UCLA, and he did a lot of research on parking. And he discovered that parking is one of the biggest things that affects people's driving habits. If you're going to drive, most trips that people take are short. So the gas price actually for your trip is probably less than the parking price.
Yeah.
And the reason that most of the time we get free parking is because government's required and zoning, and so it's built into the price of the rent or into the price of the things that you buy at a grocery store. Instead of paying for it as a driver, you're paying for it as a grocery store buyer or as a renter. And so, it's a big problem. It's a big incentive towards driving and towards expensive housing and so on.
Love that. And I wonder if you guys have thought much about this. So, James, one of the things you write about often is we have this vacant land in downtown Providence that's being used as, just places for property owners to make money off of, to rent parking spaces to meet by the day. Do you think your app can become kind of popular enough, I guess, that it can force them to do something more beneficial with their land than just sitting on it and letting it be a parking lot? Maybe this isn't something that you guys have...
Yeah, so we have thought about it. So having creating a more compact, dense city center is always advantageous to the city, both economically and just as far as having a nice community there. So there's been a big push recently to get more housing in Down City in Providence. If those could be turned into housing units, potentially some of them with driveways, then that'd be great. We would love to help turn some of those parking lots into parks. Use that land for something more worthwhile. And I think the property owners would still benefit from that. They would still be making money. I think a lot of them have the money to convert those into units, but there's no demand for it yet. So by providing this other route, by giving them this option, we're going to hopefully let a lot of people rethink the land use.
Your app could change the skyline in Providence and other cities across the country.
We'll see.
One more question before we go, or at least one more question.
Yeah, and then I have some questions about how the business is going.
Oh, okay. So one of the questions I have is how have you explored the way the taxation would work on this app? Is there some kind of a tax rate that the state or the city charges for this type of service, or?
Yeah. So for now, the city is really supportive. We've received a lot of support from various people in city planning. And it really seems like our missions are aligned with those of the city of Providence. So we're able to increase the supply of parking, we're able to limit the need to make more parking lots, creating a nicer Providence. And we're making parking easier in Providence for tourists and other people that would come and benefit the city. And a lot of the people who do come to Providence are commuters and tourists. So because we have this rich history in Providence and we want to share it with people, I think giving people options for parking is one of the best ways to start. and then there's another part here.
Well, I'm wondering how they're taxing it, because I think it's really good for people, for you to have this service where you provide a way for people to rent parking, but what tax rate do people pay? Because like one thing I think about a lot too is like, I mean, I've advocated that there be some kind of a surface parking lot tax or garage tax, and that we use some of that money to lower property taxes. So like one thing I spend a lot of time thinking about is just how expensive we make it to provide affordable housing and how cheap we make it. As you know, we built garages and subsidized parking in a lot of ways.
It's really subsidizing the upper class, essentially, people who have cars.
Yeah, essentially. So I wonder, like, I'm just kind of curious, like, how is the city or the state handling, like, taxing of someone renting a parking spot? Is there a tax on that, or how does that work?
Yeah, so right now we're a small technology business. Everything's online, our payment processor is everything's handled virtually. So there's no taxation structure for anything yet, other than the cut that our payment processor takes. But yeah, I think it's going to be something we have to figure out once we grow. But hopefully we can get to the point where making a taxation structure makes sense for us.
Okay, that's great. So I'm wondering about how the business is going.
Yeah.
Do you guys mind telling me how many downloads you have so far?
Yeah, so we have hundreds of downloads a day.
That's great.
So as far yeah, thank you. And then we use it all the time, but we're just starting to see a little pickup in our number of users. So
is it more parkers or people with parking spots who are?
Oh yeah, so we have 80 parking spaces all over the east side of Providence.
Oh wow, cool.
And so we've proven that it's really not that hard to get people to sign up.
Yeah.
People are super excited to share their parking spaces, and a lot of them are able. So one of the parts of the business that we didn't even touch on yet is that people set their own schedules for their spots.
Yep.
So So when someone signs up their spot, they're able to create their own schedule. 9 to 5 every day. That's a typical one. Some people say it's only available on weekends. They go away, and then people have the option to manage and edit their schedule through our online portal.
Yeah.
So basically, as far as our parking spot owners are concerned, they have full control. We put the spot owners in the driver's seat, so to speak.
Yeah, I love that. So I drive a '99 Honda Accord with 213,000 miles on it.
Okay.
What happens when I park in someone's driveway and it leaks oil all over the place?
Right. So so eventually, actually, we're hoping that we will cover any damages to property and vehicles with a big insurance package. That's what Airbnb did.
Yeah.
So that's really the model we're going by. Obviously, we're too small for that today, like right now, but someday that's definitely our plan. Yeah.
Do you think this could be as big as Airbnb?
It's definitely possible. I mean, I see it more as like something that helps products like Airbnb, or it's like a side package to Airbnb type things where not everybody drives, right? So not everybody's going to be using it. But there are people who drive and there are people who do need parking. And we also wish to, or hope rather, that in the future, if we can get enough spots and we can get user growth for hourly parking, we're hoping to do like subscription-based parking, so like monthly parking and then like longer-term parking. So you have a spot that you hold on to, and you're renting it from somebody's driveway, but it's someplace you can go every day and you can rely on it to be there every day. So hopefully, if that works out, we can definitely.
I have a thought that's kind of just occurred to me, because I was thinking a lot about this from my own street. I live in Doyle, and we have a driveway, and we just recently got a car, so we have one car, and then our neighbors have two. So sometimes it's full, and sometimes we're all gone.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, I wonder how much someone would pay to park in our driveway. That would be fun. With our street, the street's fairly empty of cars at night, and even during the day, it's pretty empty. And you have to have, permit and different things. So people don't tend to park in the street a lot. There's just a couple cars, and I kind of wondered what the demand was. I wonder if you've ever thought about where there are streets where there's such low demand for parking, mapping that out. Because there are places where the city could do things like put bike lanes or put bus lanes in, because there's just, most of the time there's hardly, if there's one car in a block parked in the street and you're mapping that and you're showing, well, there's just this one guy parking here. Why don't we turn this into a bike lane? And I wonder if, because you're collecting all sorts of data, if you end up with maps of this stuff.
Totally. So we're a completely data-driven company, right? One of the first things we did was use all this data from the tax assessor to really map out where all the parking was in Providence. where the lots were, and then began to use that as a bit of like a sales tool to start talking to people about parking. And yeah, eventually I think we'll have the data on that kind of thing to be able to say, hey, to the city, and here's where people are parking, here's where there's no demand. And I think inherent in the idea is we'll start generating this kind of data. So instead of just like looking into existing data, because it doesn't really exist, there's no real way to know what streets have parking all the time, right? But I think hopefully once people start signing up for more driveways and people start using it more to park, we'll be able to see trends like that. It'll become very useful.
So, Will, you're from Jersey and you're from California, I'm guessing, because you went to high school there.
Yeah.
Are you guys going to build this business in Rhode Island, or are you going to the West Coast to...
Everyone keeps asking us that.
Yeah.
It's the only thing anyone in Rhode Island wants to know. Are you going to keep your business here in Rhode Island?
Yeah, well, we can say this. If people in Rhode Island believe in this business and sign up their parking spaces and begin using it, then there's no reason to leave.
Yeah.
I think expansion is a whole other question, but yeah, we'd love to stay here. Province is the best.
Cool.
If
We hope
there's-
you do stay here.
If there's something that Rhode Islanders care an inordinate amount about, it's parking spaces, so I think you might find an audience.
Is there anything we're forgetting to ask you two about your great new idea?
So-
That I'm going to download as soon as we turn off the
Perfect.
camera.
Yeah, so if people want to download the app, they can just go right to our website, parkpvd.com. We lucked out with that domain.
It's a good one.
And so they can download the app, they can learn a little more, and they can follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. So it would be great to just engage and start hearing from people. And if people have questions for us, we're very available. They can just send us an email, hello@parkwithspotter.com.
By the way, is it just Providence, or are you going to do Rhode Island? Like, could someone do this in Pawtucket or Newport or somewhere?
Yeah, I think Newport makes a lot of sense. I don't know about Pawtucket. It's not so hard to park there, but maybe like Fall River or some areas like that. You wrote an article, yeah.
And I'm actually curious how you grow this business in other communities. You know, it seems kind of easy to, canvass the east side and find 80 people who will sign up. How do you do it in Berkeley or Avon by the Sea or...
I think it's really just about getting out there and doing it, right? Because once the platform is like fully built and everything's in place and running smoothly here, it's just a matter of letting people know about it. Because anybody can sign up a spot no matter where their location is. So as long as they know about it and there's a demand for it, I don't see why it can't be anywhere.
It's going to grow organically.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're hoping.
Yeah.
And we've really tried to build this whole business model to make it completely scalable. So there's really no limit to how many people can sign up their spaces and in what areas and who can begin using it. And so people have begun actually requesting it all over the country. So we already have people requesting it in San Francisco, Texas, Ohio, Michigan, Tokyo, Japan. So yeah, all over the world really.
So we talk all the time about how to retain business in Rhode Island. What could Rhode Island do to help you guys want to stay here and build your business, build your empire here in Rhode Island? What do you need from the public sector?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not about that, maybe Providence is just groovy enough that you'll stay, but what can we do to keep you here?
I think the city's already been great at that. They've already really tried to do everything to make it easy to start up here and to begin building, and they've really stayed out of our hair, which is maybe the best thing they could do.
Yeah. That's great. So from your vantage point, Rhode Island's doing, or Providence is doing what it takes to help build a small business, turn into...
I think so. And people in Providence really do care about Providence. So figuring out how we fit in with the community was a really important thing for us, and I think we finally have.
How do you think it affects your business when the state does something like spends $80 million to build another garage? I mean, adds another 1,200 spots in downtown. All of us taxpayers are paying for that, right? Do you think that kind of undercuts your effort to find clever solutions without those subsidies?
It doesn't help. I think, there's always going to be new lots and new garages popping up until there's no reason for them. So that's more on us to figure out a way to launch this and grow this fast enough so that they don't need to.
Excellent.
You guys are in direct competition with the state that's trying to develop parking lots as you're trying to kind of put to use this, what did you call it, idle space, an idle asset, I think you call it.
But again, I don't think the state really wants to do that. I think they're put in a position where there's laws that say you have to have this many parking spaces for each person working at this business. And I think beginning to get
Tell our
into
viewers about that, because I don't know unless maybe if they've read a bunch of stuff I've written, but I don't
so
know if people know
as far as I know, a couple of years ago they began changing that and modifying it, and it got a little better. But up until about 2 years ago, every business in Providence and potentially in Rhode Island needed to have 1.5 parking spaces for every resident. So either for businesses and for housing units, which is pretty crazy. Maybe not for businesses. I think it was definitely for housing units. I'm not sure.
I don't have the rates like memorized, but like usually there's all sorts of arcane. Like it'll be like two per person for a Chinese restaurant, and 1.5 for a funeral home. And there'll be different. It's every sort of thing is down. And there's usually like a 3-page list. But
right. I mean, you end up getting into a situation where these businesses and property managers are spending tons of money creating huge lots in downtown urban areas where they would much rather build another housing unit, right? So we hope to reduce the need to keep doing that.
excellent.
You got anything else, James?
I think that's good. Yeah.
Guys, tell us your domain name and how we can get in touch with you one more time, man.
Yeah, so if you just visit www.parkpvd.com, you can get signed up to be a spot owner, or you can download the app.